Let's talk about malaria. You know, it's one of humanity's oldest and deadliest diseases. Seriously, it's a scourge that might have been with us since we first evolved. For centuries, it's been a relentless killer. But here's the thing, this isn't just a story about a devastating disease. It's also a surprising story about scientific detective work, human ingenuity, and a hard-won victory that holds some incredible lessons for us all. Okay, let's dive in.
So let's start at the microscopic level. What you're looking at here is a slide of healthy blood. See how the red blood cells are all clean and uniform? They're just doing their job. This is our healthy baseline.
And now, look at this. This is what happens when malaria invades. See those little rings inside the red blood cells? Yeah, that's the parasite itself. It's just a really stark, immediate picture of what this disease does. It literally hijacks the machinery of our own bodies.
So how in the world do you find an enemy that's this small? Well, for over 100 years, the answer has been surprisingly direct. You just look for it. The gold standard for diagnosing malaria is still looking at the parasite directly on a blood smear.
And the process itself is pretty simple, really accurate, and pretty cost-effective. First up, you collect a small blood sample and smear it on a slide. Then, you use these special stains that make the parasite's nucleus pop. It turns red or pink, making it stand out. And finally, a skilled technician looks at the slide under a microscope, basically hunting for those little invaders.
And getting this diagnosis right is critical because not all malaria parasites are created equal. For instance, you've got Plasmodium vivax, which actually makes the red blood cells it infects get bigger. Then there's a Plasmodium falciparum, that's the deadliest one, where you can often see multiple parasites all crammed into a single cell. Figuring out the exact species is absolutely crucial for picking the right treatment.
Which brings us to the central puzzle of malaria. I mean, think about this. We've had an effective cure, quinine, since the 1600s. We've known that mosquitoes spread it since 1897. So why, after centuries of knowing all this, does the disease still kill over 500,000 people a year? This question from journalist Sonia Shah really pivots the whole conversation from the science of the disease to the deep complexities of actually fighting it.
The first reason it's so tough is purely scientific. The malaria parasite is, as Sonia Shah puts it, an incredibly wily pathogen. It is a master of disguise, a true shapeshifter that's just fantastically adapted for survival.
Just get a load of this number, 7. The malaria parasite completely transforms itself 7 different times in its life cycle, jumping between a cold-blooded mosquito and a warm-blooded human. And each stage is totally distinct, which means a drug that kills one form might be completely useless against the others. That makes it an incredibly difficult target to nail down.
And then, of course, there's the mosquito itself. It's not like we can just avoid where they live. As this slide shows so well, something as simple as a footprint filling with rain can create a perfect breeding ground. We end up creating habitats for them just by living our daily lives, which makes controlling them a monumental challenge.
But the challenges aren't just scientific. Oh no. They're also deeply rooted in economics and culture. And they create what you can only really call a paradox of perception.
You see, malaria and poverty are locked in this vicious cycle. Poverty makes you more vulnerable to malaria, for sure. But malaria also causes poverty. It often hits right during harvest season, and economists have actually quantified it. It can drag down a nation's economy by about 1.3% of GDP growth year after year after year. And here's the paradox. In places where malaria is most common, it's often not seen as a killer disease, but just a normal part of life. If a kid survives a few bouts, it starts to feel like the flu, something that just comes and goes. This perception creates a huge cultural barrier. I mean, if people think it's normal, how do you convince them to run to a doctor or to use a bed net every single night?
So with all these barriers, scientific, economic, cultural, you might start to think the fight is hopeless. But it's absolutely not. And for proof, we only need to look at the incredible story of Sri Lanka.
This right here is a milestone worth celebrating. In 2016, the WHO officially certified Sri Lanka as malaria-free. The country hasn't had a single local case, meaning one transmitted inside the country, since way back in October of 2012. They did it. They actually won.
So, the big question is, how'd they do it? Well, it wasn't some magic silver bullet. It was a comprehensive, all-out strategy. On the ground, they had rigorous surveillance with mobile clinics to reach everybody. They attacked the mosquitoes with strong vector control, things like spraying and managing breeding sites. But just as important, they had widespread public education and, this is key, sustained political commitment to see the fight all the way through.
But as Sri Lanka's story shows us, getting rid of malaria is really only half the battle. Now they face a whole new challenge, keeping it out for good. The work is never over.
And you can see that vigilance clear as day in their official 2023 treatment guidelines. They have a specific, tailored plan for any case that gets imported into the country. Depending on the species, is it P. falciparum or P. vivax, and how sick the person is, doctors have a precise combination of drugs to use. They aren't just reacting, they have a proactive playbook ready to go to stop the disease before it can ever spread again.
And this really brings their story full circle. Now that the disease is gone from daily life, their biggest challenge has shifted. It's not about treating patients anymore, it's about fighting complacency. They have to keep the entire population aware of the risk of it coming back, from travelers who arrive from countries where malaria is still endemic.
And that's really the ultimate takeaway here. Sri Lanka proved that one of our oldest enemies can be beaten. But their victory comes with a profound lesson, and is captured perfectly in this quote. Defeating malaria isn't a one-and-done event. It's a constant state of vigilance, because zero transmission means zero time to let down our guard.